Okay, we are wrapping up today our foray into Rambam's extra Mishnah Torah, I guess, right? Outside of the Mishnah Torah references to Maaseh Merkavah and Maaseh Bereishis. And we were in the Moreh 134 when he's talking about the 5 causes of why you should not start with metaphysics. And so quick summary. The first one was that the subject matter is difficult. Second one is that the people start off with a blank slate, and there are a lot of ways to go wrong, and like not everyone is really equipped by constitution to arrive at the at the level. And then the third cause, which we were working on, was he says let's just start reading again because we didn't get that far into it. This is on the last paragraph on 134. This is in the Pines edition. The third cause lies in the length of the preliminaries, for man has in his nature a desire to seek the ends, and he often finds preliminaries tedious and refuses to engage in them. Know, however, that if an end could be achieved without the preliminaries that preceded, the latter would not be preliminaries, but pure distractions and futilities. So,
isn't there a claim that these aren't necessary?
Yeah. So I think I was actually just thinking about this. So the question is like, what does he have to say at this point here? So if you're dealing with a person who is overtly claiming that these are not preliminaries, then I don't really think they're going to be swayed by the Rambam's argument or his course here. I think what everyone feels though is, these are preliminaries, but I don't need to do them, and that's why he's saying, well, if you really didn't need to do them, then they wouldn't be preliminaries. Like, it's I think it's one of these like exceptionalism type things, Now, this is, I think, the last thing we did. Now, if you would awaken a man, even though he were the dullest of all people, as one wakens a sleeping individual, and if you were to ask him whether he desired at that moment to have knowledge of the heavenly spheres, namely what their number is and what their configuration and what is contained in them and what the angels are and how the world as a whole was created and what its end is in view of the arrangement of its various parts with one another and what the soul is and how it is created in time in the body and whether the human soul can be separated from the body and if it can, in what manner and through what instrument and with what distinction in view. And if you put the same question to him with regard to other subjects of research of this kind, he would undoubtedly answer you in the affirmative. He would have a natural desire to know these things as they are in truth, but he would wish this desire to be allayed, and the knowledge of all this to be achieved by means of 1 or 2 words that you would say to him. If, however, you would lay upon him the obligation to abandon his occupation for a week's time until he should understand all this, he would not do it, but would be satisfied with deceptive imaginings through which his soul would be set at ease. He would also dislike being told that there is a thing whose knowledge requires many premises and a long time for investigation. Okay, so I think that's as far as we got, right? So I think that part's pretty clear, right? People just want the quick fix and they don't want to do any work to get to it. You know that these matters are mutually connected, there being nothing in what exists besides God, may he be exalted, and the totality of things he has made. For this totality includes everything comprised in what exists except only him.
Wait.
Yeah, I don't know what he's going into, Niall.
First of all, it seems to not follow. And
Yeah.
Also, what does that even mean, that nothing exists besides God?
Besides God and that the totality of things he has made.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Which what do you call it? I had an observation on that. I don't remember. Okay. For this totality includes everything comprised in what exists except only him, right? There is, moreover, so again, I don't know why he has to mention that here either.
Yeah. Is he saying that's something that takes a lot of prerequisites to understand?
I don't know. I'm not sure. You know that these matters are mutually connected. The matter of I don't know if he means the prerequisites. I don't know if he means the matter of like needing prerequisites, or if he means like knowledge of the prerequisite, that since everything in the universe is interconnected, then you need to know the prerequisites in order to get to knowledge of God. Let's see where he goes with it, and then we'll go back. There is, moreover, no way to apprehend him except it be through the things he has made, for they are indicative of his existence and of what ought to be believed about him. I mean to say, of what should be affirmed and denied with regard to him. It is therefore indispensable to consider all beings as they really are, so that we may obtain for all the kinds of beings true and certain premises that would be useful to us in our researches pertaining to the divine science. Yeah, so he is making an argument about the relationship between like what knowledge of God is and the prerequisites as prerequisites. He's saying since the only way to know God, since the only thing that exists is God and what he's created, and since the only, this is a deductive argument, and since knowledge of God is only attainable through knowledge of what he has created. Therefore, the only way to get to the science, to the divine science, is by having knowledge of all of the other aspects of existence.
I see.
Which presumably the unstated premise is that the prerequisites pertain to that, and this is something that I mentioned to Isaac we might have to do. And I think I mentioned this after shiur, is go into the, not necessarily for our purposes here, but at some point go into the intro to the Moreh and see who the Moreh was written for, and like see what prerequisites he lays out there, because that's presumably even prior to Maaseh Merkavah, because that's for the Moreh. And then the other question I want to take up at some point is, I think we all have this, we are all falling into this trap, so in some way, because we all know that the Rambam says that these things should only be, that the Moreh should only be read and studied by a certain student, and like all these prerequisites, blah, blah, blah. Yet everyone we know reads the Moreh and like talks about it, So like, how are we making this mistake, and what do we make of that? So I think that's like an important question to address at some point, not necessarily like this week or whatever, but yeah. Okay. So, and I guess to add to that, just one more question to list here is, I don't know which of the prerequisites were defined as such or identified as such because that's how they understood the world, and how many of them are prerequisites because that's how they understood the human mind. So for example, their concept of, so let's say the physical sciences, what he says here seems to be definitely true. You can't do metaphysics without understanding physics. Okay, and that would seem to be true today. Okay, a lot harder today.
Right, but also you don't have to know, like let's say the proof of change or whatever. That you brought. Like, so in terms of that.
Right, so that's also good. Right, that's a good question, right? Meaning what of physics? Yeah, right. What Rambam didn't know that.
Right.
Yet he was involved in metaphysics.
Right.
So like, what level of knowledge of our physics do we have to have in order to know metaphysics? But then other stuff like, it seems like astronomy in their day was not a branch of physics. It seems like astronomy was much more of a branch of mathematics because they lumped astronomy, math, and music together in many ways. Like harmonics and mathematics are certainly related. Like, seems like they put astronomy in there also, So like, what aspects of that, like what were they trying to get out of that? How did they conceive of that gain as a need for metaphysics? And like, what do we need to do to satisfy that requirement, And again, this is the big problem here, is like, what aspects of their metaphysics are tied to their physics? Like maybe the study of metaphysics has changed. In fact, I just saw someone post a question on one of the discussion boards that I follow, or one of the Facebook groups, asking for articles on contemporary scholarship on Maaseh Merkavah and Maaseh Bereishis. And then the person who posted it said, like, only give me Russia Prakim. but I am curious, and I don't even know if there's anyone who's qualified to know that now,
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah, it's really murky. I mean, look, like you could see, like, it's very funny. It's ironic because, like, he said, all of the knowledge of Maaseh Merkavah has been lost, and it's like our knowledge of the people who wrote about Maaseh Merkavah has been lost in a different way, that we have the writings, but we can't make heads or tails of like how it corresponds to what we have access to now.
Yeah. Also, like he talks about like prerequisites of like math and also like knowing physics and stuff like that. So is that like nowadays I feel like people just in general, like just by going to school, you have a lot more.
That's a good question also, right?
Like
that's a legitimate question, right? I mean, like
I need prerequisites because we have school.
Right. I mean, yeah. On the one hand, like my gut reaction to that is like, of course not. So, our education is horrible, and like they could reconstruct Euclid from scratch, Right. But maybe that's not true. Yeah. It's I don't know. Yeah. This is the type of thing. Yeah. This type of thing that's above my pay grade, like this is the type of thing, when we were talking earlier about like, the Q&As that in between the time I left yeshiva and like, I guess like the era right after my era in yeshiva, there were a lot of Q&As with Rabbi Chait, and like, this is the type of question I would ask. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't even know how I'd formulate it or how many questions I'd break it down to, but like, I feel like I just don't. Yeah, I just don't know who knows the answers to this. Okay. Anyway, yeah.
I'm of the opinion that no one's had a satisfying answer to this question.
Yeah, and you know what? It could be that the Rambam himself didn't, because the Rambam says that the knowledge of this was lost, and he reconstructed it, and he was so in doubt about whether he got it right, that he's just trying to grope the perimeters of like whatever, like how much metaphysical knowledge he can get based on his own theories, but like that's totally that was speculative as well. Yeah. Okay. At least you can know that if you get it wrong, then you can just die or go crazy or become an apikoros. All right.
Changing it up and sound more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like the people who did take that dare are having a lot of fun. All right. Where are we at now? However, it is therefore indispensable to consider all beings as they really are, so that we may obtain for all the kinds of beings true and certain premises that would be useful to us in our researches pertaining to the divine science. How very many are the premises thus taken from the nature of numbers, okay, we're going to math now, and the properties of geometrical figures, from which we draw inferences concerning things that we should deny with respect to God, may he be exalted. See, this is another thing, right? Like, let's take even geometry has evolved a lot since the time of the Rambam, and like, you read stuff like the Chovos Halavovos's proofs in Shar HaYichud, and like he's throwing around terms like infinity, but like the knowledge of what infinity is and the different modes and theories with which to think of infinity has also grown a lot since the time of since his time, So even something like as neutral or as like stable as math has undergone so many changes that and this denial is indicative to us of many notions. As for the number of the matters pertaining to astronomy of the spheres and to natural science, I do not consider that you should have any difficulty in grasping that those are matters necessary for the apprehension of the relation of the world to God's governance, as this relation is in truth and not according to imaginings. Okay, yeah, I don't think we have trouble with that. There are also many speculative subjects that, although no premises can be obtained from them for the use of this science, nevertheless train the mind and procure it the habitus. Habitus is the Pines translation of quality. Or what's the there's another fancy English word for it. Yeah, it's I don't know why he uses the term. It must have some subtle philosophical meaning that I don't know. But yeah, habitus, the habitus of drawing inferences and knowing the truth in matters pertaining to its essence. Is he going to give an example? Let's hope. They also put an end to the confusion in most of the minds of those engaged in speculation, a confusion mistaking things that are accidental for those that are essential. Hereby an end is also put to the perversion of opinions arising out of this confusion. All this is achieved in addition to the representation of these subjects as they really are, even if they in no way belong to the divine science. These subjects, it's like it reminds me of like when you're at like an award ceremony and like they haven't said who they're naming yet, but they're just describing them a lot. These subjects are also not devoid of utility in other points, namely with respect to matters that lead up to that science. Accordingly, it is certainly necessary for whoever wishes to achieve human perfection to train himself at first in the art of logic. Okay, I guess that's what it was, right? Meaning you're not getting any premises from logic that are directly related to the divine science, but it will help you to differentiate between what's accidental and essential, to avoid errors, to train you in the habitus of drawing inferences. Maybe it does sound like it means habit there. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, fine. Right, so blah, blah, blah. Accordingly, it's certainly necessary for whoever wishes to achieve human perfection to train himself at first in the art of logic, then in the mathematical sciences, according to the proper order, then in the natural sciences, and after that, the divine science. And remember, just to put a plug here, Rambam holds that that's what shiur is about, it's about what you need in order to get to metaphysics and Ahavas Hashem, and like he goes through, he holds that part of it is a mashal for like what you get from logic, and part of it is what you get from math, part of it is what you get from science, and then like metaphysics. We find many people whose mind stops short at one of these sciences, and sometimes even if their mind does not miss the mark, they are cut off by death while engaged in some preliminary study. Although if we never in any way acquired an opinion through following traditional authority and were not correctly conducted towards something by means of parables, but were obliged to achieve a perfect representation by means of essential definitions, and by pronouncing true only that which is meant to be pronounced true in virtue of demonstration, which would be impossible except after the above mentioned lengthy preliminary studies. This state of affairs would lead to all people dying without having known whether there is a deity for the world or whether there's not, much less whether a proposition should be affirmed with regard to him or a defect denied. So
All people?
that's what he says.
Yeah.
I mean, Abraham did pretty well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's an exaggeration, but like it does sound like you're, if with revelation, then we've lost everything. Kolshkein, like if we never had any guidance to begin with, nobody would ever be saved from this perdition except one of a city and two of a family. As for the few solitary individuals, Hasaridim Asher Hashem Koreh, right? That's where we get the blog title from. The perfection which constitutes the end to be aimed at is realized for them only after the above mentioned preliminary studies. Okay, so meaning the few people who are capable, they need to go through the whole training. Shlomo has made it clear that the need for preliminary studies is a necessity and that it is impossible to attain true wisdom except after having been trained. For he says, if the iron be blunt and he do not whet the edge, then must he put to more strength. But even more preparation is needed for wisdom. Okay, basically, like I guess the basic thing in the mashal here is like if you have to sharpen your iron in order to like use it, then coach gain for chachma. Yeah. All right. And he also says, hear counsel and receive instruction that thou mayest be wise in the latter end. Wait, was that Mishlei or Koheles? Oh, it was a Koheles. Okay. It was a Mishlei pasuk in Koheles. It sounded very Mishlei. Yeah. There's also a necessity of another kind for achieving the knowledge of preliminary studies, as if you didn't have enough already. It arises from the fact that when a man seeks to obtain knowledge quickly, many doubts occur to him, and he moreover quickly understands objections. I mean to say, the destruction of a particular doctrine, this being similar to the demolition of a building. Now, the establishment of doctrines as true and the solution of doubts can only be grounded upon many premises taken from the preliminary studies. One engaged in speculation without preliminary study is therefore comparable to someone who walked on his 2 feet in order to reach a certain place, and while on the way fell into a deep well without having any device to get out of there before he perishes. It would have been better for him if he had foregone walking and had quietly remained in his own place. In Proverbs, Shlomo describes at length the state of lazy people and their incapacity, all this being a parable for the incapacity to seek knowledge of the sciences. Thus, speaking of the desire of someone who desires to achieve his end, but making no effort to achieve knowledge of the preliminary studies leading up to these ends, does nothing else but desire. He says, the desire of the slothful killeth him, for his hands refuse to labor. He coveteth greedily all the day long, but the righteous giveth and spareth not. So he's learning that that's about intellectual laziness. In these verses, he says that the reason why the desire of the slothful kills him is to be found in the fact that he makes no effort and does not work with a view to that which would allay that desire. He has only an abundance of longing and nothing else, while he aspires to things for whose achievement he lacks the necessary instrument. It would be healthier for him if he renounced this desire. Consider now how the ending of the parable explains the beginning. For in his dictum, but the righteous giveth and spareth not, the word righteous is not antithetical to slothful. Using opposites, right? He is a confirmation from the Rambam, right? So he's saying that tzaddik and atzel are not opposites, except according to the explanation that we propounded.
Cool.
Yeah, good vindication. For Shlomo says that the just one among men is he who gives everything its due. He's defining tzaddik here. So that's interesting here. I have not noticed this in the Rambam before. I extrapolated my definition of tzaddik from the Rambam's definition of tzedek in the second to the last chapter of the Moreh Nevuchim, but here he's saying that is the definition of tzaddik in Mishlei. So
cool, nice, and it works.
Put that
same one.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, same one. Because he says tzedek is giving something what it is own and giving an existing thing what is befitting of its existence.
Right.
So that's what he's saying a tzaddik is. He means thereby that he gives all his time to seeking knowledge and spares no portion of his time for anything else. He says, so meaning it's the opposite of laziness, he's saying. He says...
what your mind is doing?
Yeah, what your mind is doing, exactly, yeah. In this case. He says, as it were, but the righteous gives his days to wisdom and is not sparing of them, which corresponds to saying, give not thy strength unto women. Now, the majority of the men of knowledge, I mean, those generally, I assume unto women means either women literally, and he means like the, like taivas, or women as a muscle for like your material body and psyche and its needs. I mean, it amounts to the same thing. Now, the majority of the men of knowledge, I mean, those generally known as men of knowledge, labor under this disease. I mean, that which consists in seeking to achieve the ends and in speaking about them without having engaged in the studies preliminary to them. Okay, so that's interesting. When he said the majority of men of knowledge, I mean those generally known as men of knowledge. I think what he means by generally known, meaning people with a reputation for it, because if you are a man of knowledge, you would realize you need to do the preliminaries. With some of them, their ignorance or their desire to have the first place goes so far as to cause them to disapprove of these preliminary studies, which they are incapable of grasping or are too lazy to seek to understand. Accordingly, they wish to show that these studies are harmful or useless. However, when one reflects, the truth of the matter is clear and manifest. Yeah, I wonder which particular group he's talking about here. Like, I wonder if he's talking, let's say, about, I have no idea if there were people in his days that were like, I gotta imagine there were, but who are like akin to the people in our days who are like anti-secular studies and like rejected the study of like the like math and science and stuff for those reasons, but claim to be metaphysicians, you know?
There definitely were Islamic philosophers who were like that. I don't know. It might have. I think it was before the Rambam, but maybe not.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So that was a long one, right?
Yeah.
Some people don't even want to finish that paragraph. Yeah. I mean, I said that as a joke, but I think it's true, right? It's like people are not even willing to like read up on the notion of like, are there preliminaries for this, you know? It's interesting. Yeah, it is. It's so ironic how like not ironic, maybe that's the wrong word, but it's just like, you know, if people, I was going to use an example that would also be bad. Hold on. Okay, I mean, it's like the way that people make fancy themselves medical experts in the era of Corona, or like, you know, things like that, where they're taking something which is clearly requires a lot of prerequisites and knowledge in order to have a grasp on, and then they just feel like they can be an expert in it as though it's like a simple thing.
Right.
It's
interesting. Like it's no one knows what they're talking
exactly
about.
Right. So what's interesting about it is like where people, it seems almost arbitrary or cultural, which is another form of arbitrary, where people draw that line. Like there's no one who thinks that they know computer programming, like that they could just do it on their own.
Right.
Like they know that that's beyond them. And no one thinks they could do surgery on their own. But when it comes to evaluating like the decision by the CDC or whatever, then like everyone's an expert. So like here too, people put topics like God and the soul and angels on that side of the category and just assume that it's like something that is simple, that they don't really need any sort of prerequisites, and like it's, you know, you can get it in 2 words, you know, tzaddik v'ralo, yeah, I can answer it like in a sentence, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay. And I feel like part of the lack there, and I guess this is implicit in what he's saying, but I think it was too basic for him to say. There are people who just are not involved in knowledge to, like, there's a certain involvement. If you're involved enough in any particular chachma, you at least can get the sense of how deep and broad that chachma is, which creates the potential for you to realize, oh, maybe that guy's field is equally deep or deeper, you know, and it creates a certain humility, or at least it should, you know, but yeah, people don't have that here.
Yeah, it's like what we were talking about this morning, about how you like take a particular situation.
Yeah.
It's like an extra step to.
Right, that's true. They don't universalize.
Yeah.
Okay, the 4th cause is to be found in the natural aptitudes. You got to have a, what does SAT stand for? Scholastic Aptitude Test. You got to have the MAT, the Metaphysical Aptitude Test. For it has been explained, or rather demonstrated, that the moral virtues, this connects to what we were doing this morning, the moral virtues are a preparation for the rational virtues. It being impossible to achieve true rational acts. What does that footnote 20 say? Arabic, literally the true rational things, okay? Being impossible to achieve true rational acts, I mean perfect rationality, unless it be by a man thoroughly trained with respect to his morals and endowed with the qualities of tranquility and quiet.
Wait, and rationality, we mean what?
I think he means the proper exercise of the intellect and the ability and the actual apprehension of knowledge.
Okay.
That's why I'm going on that assumption for now. We'll see. Right. So you need the qualities of tranquility and quiet. I meant to get the kafech here. I just want to see what the kafech says for tranquility and quiet. Because those are loaded terms. Does he mean stoic tranquility? Let's see. More nevuchim. Where's my more nevuchim? Okay. No. Wait a minute. Why am I not finding it? More nevuchim here. What? Oh, this is 134, right? Yeah, 134. and this is Revi. Okay, is muskalos shlemos is how he says rational thingies. Ki'im la'adam bal midos muchsharas ma'od. Adam noach umiyushav. Miyushav, does that bring something to mind? In the 4th parak of Yesodei Torah that we did, when we did the end of it, and he says that you need to, we're talking about davar gadol and davar katan. I think.
Oh, yeah, was that, we have to eat like the meat and wine?
Yeah.
To settle your mind.
Yeah, before you got to the orchard.
Yeah.
So it's to settle the mind, right? So yishuv, yeah. I don't know if that's the same, but that's just what I'm associating to there. Adam noachum yushav, and then there's a footnote in the Kafak, so I'm just going to read the footnote here, footnote 50. Linyanim ele yachad rabbeinu yichad rabbeinu es shmonas haprakim shehiktim la'avos. So he says, Rambam talks about that in Shmona Prakim. Okay, fine. Anyway, there are, moreover, many people who have received who have received from their first natural disposition a complexion of temperament with which perfection is in no way compatible. Meaning that some people start off with a really bad natural state. That makes perfection impossible. He's going to give examples. Such is the case of one whose heart is naturally exceedingly hot. Here we go with the theories of physiology here. For he cannot refrain from anger, even if he subjects his soul to very stringent training. This is also the case of one whose testicles have a hot and humid temperament and are of a strong constitution, in whom the seminal vessels abundantly generate semen. Right, all that over imbalance of bodily fluids. For it is unlikely that such a man, even if he subjects his soul to the most severe training, should be chaste. Similarly, you find among people rash and reckless folk whose movements, being very agitated and disordered, indicate a corruption of the complexion and a poor quality of temperament, of which it is impossible to give an account. Perfection can never be perceived in such people, and to make an effort for their benefit in this matter is pure ignorance on the part of him who makes the effort. For this science, as you know, is not like the science of medicine or the science of geometry, and not everyone has the disposition required for it in the various respects we mentioned. Now, that's an interesting point, because at the beginning of this paragraph, it sounded like he was saying for any like rational perfection, you need perfection of moral virtues. Now he's saying that the divine science is not like medicine and geometry, which presumably you don't need either at all or to the same degree, the same type of moral virtue.
Why is it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's read on and then answer it, because hopefully he'll explain. It is accordingly indubitable that preparatory moral training should be carried out before beginning with the science, so that man should be in a state of extreme uprightness and perfection. For the perverse is an abomination to the Lord, but his secret is with the righteous. Is that Mishlei? Yeah. For this reason, the teaching of this science to the young is disapproved of. So he only mentions the young now, because the young is implicit in everything he said before. It's just that I guess theoretically, if you got like a genius, then you could do it, you know. But genius is not going to help you with your personality traits.
Well, can you also have a really temperate person?
Yeah, you could have a temperate person, right?
Like a temperate kid.
Right. But to have someone who's genius in both is very rare, because usually the geniuses are all messed up. When, however, this, it is in fact impossible for them to absorb it because of the effervescence of their natures and of their minds being occupied with the flame of growth. Hey kid, what you thinking of? The flame of growth. When, however, this flame that gives rise to perplexity is extinguished, that sounds really bad. The young achieve tranquility and quiet, and their hearts submit and yield with respect to the temperament. They then may call upon their souls to raise themselves up to this rank, which is that of the apprehension of him, may he be exalted. I mean thereby the divine science that is designated as the account of the chariot. Accordingly, scripture says the Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart. Interesting, he says, I always assumed that the broken heart was like humility. He seems to be saying it's this like quietude and tranquility. And it says, I dwell in the high and holy place with him also that is of a contrite and humble spirit. Oh, he does say humble, and so on. For this reason, they say in the Talmud with respect to the dictum of the sages of the Mishnah, the chapter headings may be transmitted to him. The chapter headings ought not to be transmitted except to a president of the court and one whose heart within him is full of care. So this is from the Gemara in Chagiga on that Mishnah, where it goes through specific qualities that you need in order to like be in the realm where you might be ready for Maaseh Merkavah. So one of them is, I forgot what the Hebrew is, president of the court, and one whose heart within him is full of care.
Wait, so hold on. how does the Ramban then even claim that he has Maaseh Merkavah if he's not the president of the court?
Oh, I think that these are all figurative.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It just means someone who's like.
I think he might explain.
Okay.
If he doesn't, then the Gemara, then I think either the Gemara itself does or Rashi does.
Okay.
Yeah. The purpose. Well, you can look it up in a little while. If actually, well, we'll see. The purpose of this is to signify obedience, submission, and great piety joined to knowledge. It is also said there, the mysteries of the court may only be transmitted to a counselor, wise in crafts, and endowed with the understanding of whispering. Yeah, that was the those are the other terms in the Gemara there. Now, these are matters that undoubtedly require a natural predisposition. Do you not know, among various people, one who is very feeble in point of opinion, though he be the most understanding of men? Feeble in the point of opinion? What is that supposed to mean?
Dora in Greek. Oh,
Doxa, yeah. I don't know what that even means. All right. I mean, I know opinion is doxa, but yeah. Okay. I don't know what feeble in point. Let me just. I got to look at the Kafik. While I'm at the Kafik, I can also look at the Hebrew for those terms here. So it says that in the Gemara there, you need someone who is, Av Beis Din is president of the court. Again, I don't think that means literal. Okay, who shalibo doeg bekirbo, and his heart has anxiety within him. V'hakavan bakach shiflus haruach v'ha'anava v'yishuv hadas hamuflag yishuv hadas again. Nosav al chacham v'sham amru ein mosrin sijutor ela liyoitz v'chacham harashim v'navon lachash. Those are the three terms. Yoitz is an advisor. Chacham harashim, a wise person of harashim. Crafts, and then navon lachash, one who understands whispers. Ve'ele devarim shahachana hativis hachrachis b'hem haloide ataki yesh b'bnei adam chalushe machshava. That's what you're saying. Feeble opinion. Ma'od alpha p shu mevin yosem mikol adam. I still don't know what it means.
Like weakened thought.
Yeah.
Like
there's a footnote here.
I mean, like they know a lot of things, but they're not able.
Kafka says Efshar for Machshav, he says Efshar Svara. And then the Shmuel Ibn Tibbon translates as Eitza. He says V'hakvanashu bal tfisa kala, he grasps things quickly. Ela shahavanaso shatachis ma'od, but his understanding is very broad, I think. V'im bichoto l'redis l'omek hadvarim, but he can't go depth. So it's just like a lot of straight A students, right? Is that they get things really quickly, but they can't think deeply. Yeah.
Sinai, as opposed to Oklahoma. Or whatever, like a bekius.
The other way, yeah. Oh, yeah, Sinai, you're right. Sinai, right? Yeah. Okay. Another, on the other hand, may have an unerring opinion and an excellent way of conducting affairs in political matters. Such one is called a counselor. Okay. However, someone of that sort might not understand an intelligible notion, even though it were close to being one of the first intelligibles. Okay. He might be meaning that he's very, very good with the practical, like street smarts, but just not conceptual thinking.
Even though it's really basic things.
Yeah. Basic conceptual things.
Like first intelligibles would be like axioms of mind.
Yeah. He might be very stupid and lacking in ingenious devices. Thus it says, wherefore is there a price in the hand of a fool to buy wisdom, seeing he hath no heart for it? That's Mishle. Among men there is also found one who is naturally full of understanding and perspicacity, and capable of giving concise and coherent expression to the most hidden notions. Such one is called endowed with understanding of whispering. See, if we really were wanted to take our time, then we would try to define what each of these things is, but I'm just not interested. Okay. However, someone of this sort does not necessarily occupy himself with and achieve knowledge of the sciences. The one who has actually achieved knowledge of the sciences is called wise in crafts. Of him, the sages say, when he speaks, they all become deaf. It's funny. The translation I remember from the Gemara is when they speak, they all become mute, because like no one wants to say anything, like no one wants to speak against him. Deaf doesn't make as much sense to me. Consider how by means of a text of a book, they laid down as conditions the perfection of the individual is being perfect in the various varieties of political regimes, as well as in the speculative sciences, and withal his possessing natural perspicacity and understanding and the gift of finally expressing himself and communicating notions in flashes. See, it seems like now he's moved on from moral virtues and has gone into what sounds like intellectual virtues.
Right. Yeah.
Unless the term moral virtue in the translation was very loose, and just like we saw in the Rebbeinu Yonah, that maybe it was like a general term like ma'alos, which could mean ma'alos sichlios or ma'alos midosios.
Right. Yeah, it's weird. I feel like the political thing doesn't really fit in.
Yeah. Kafik does say ma'alos midosios though. Right. Oh yeah, mitzayim no, he does. He says malos midosios are mitzayim lamalos hahigionios, that they're prerequisite for intellectual virtues. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Where are we here? If all this is realized in someone, then the mysteries of the Torah may be transmitted to him. There's likewise said there, Rabbi Yochanan said to Rabbi Elazar, "Come, so that I should teach you the account of the chariot." Whereupon Rabbi Elazar said to him, "I'm not yet old." He means I'm not yet aged, and up to now find in myself the effervescence of nature and the recklessness of adolescence. See accordingly how they posed age as a condition superadded to the above-mentioned excellencies. How then could one plunge into these studies together with all the multitude, the children and the women? So it sounds like he's saying he was intellectually qualified, but because he had this effervescence of youth, then he said he wasn't ready for it yet. Yeah. Going to your question in terms of like, why is this necessary? I mean, like, my understanding is twofold. One is that if you don't have perfected midos, that's going to interfere. Maybe this is the same thing. I'm going to say both of them anyway. It's going to interfere in your ability to think objectionally without being swayed by your psyche. But then the second thing is we hold that like the knowledge that is valued is not just knowledge that is like, you know, theoretical or verbal, but like knowledge that is real to the mind. And being real to the mind means that it is received by your psyche and personality in a certain way. And like if your personality lacks a certain maturity, it won't be able, like you can understand it intellectually perfectly, but it's not going to be able to impact the total self in the proper way because your psyche is not ready for it. This is my general understanding there. Okay, the fifth cause is to be found in the fact that men are occupied with the necessities of the bodies, which are the first perfection. And more particularly if in addition they are occupied with taking care of a wife and of children, and even more especially if there is in them, super added to that, a demand for the superfluities of life, which we talked about earlier in Mishlei, I think, people desiring superfluous things, which becomes an established habitus as a result of the bad conduct of life and bad customs. Things are so that if even a perfect man, as we have mentioned, were to occupy himself much with these necessary things, and all the more if he were to occupy himself with unnecessary things, and if his desire for them should grow strong, he would find that his theoretical desires had grown weak and had been submerged, and his demand for them would slacken and become intermittent and inattentive. He accordingly would not grasp things that otherwise would have been within his power to grasp, or else he would grasp them with a confused apprehension, a mixture of apprehension and failure to apprehend. So that's like, if you're involved with all the practicalities of life, and that is drawing your attention here and your desires there, and like spending your time, and then all the more stuff you're involved in, like all the stuff you don't need, it's going to diminish from you to being able to fully involve yourself in these things. And you're only going to get like bits and pieces, and that's not going to really lead to perfection in them. Yeah. In view of all these causes, these matters are only for the few solitary individuals of a very special sort, not for the multitude. For this reason, they should be kept hidden from the beginner, and he should be prevented from taking them up, just as a small baby is prevented from taking coarse foods and from lifting heavy weights. Yeah. I mean, he makes a powerful argument. Yeah. But again, it's an incomplete argument in the, or I mean, maybe it's complete, but I'm saying our understanding is incomplete in the sense that, you know, the stuff in the Mishnah Torah, right, which he says is of the inyanim of Maaseh Merkavah, Maaseh Bereishis. A, he holds that everyone can get that. B, those are all the main topics, you know? Yeah. So like, in other words, I guess, maybe I shouldn't say ABC, but like, what is we asked this before, but like, what's the line in terms of how far you can take an understanding of those topics before you get into this territory? Mm-hmm. And can you then explain, once you explain that that's where the line is, why I can be Mekayim Yichud Hashem, but I can't understand metaphysics, you know? Like, what is it? if these preliminaries are necessary for certain things, why aren't they necessary for these mitzvos, the 4 mitzvos?
Right. Fascinating.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
So the next task, should we start the third parak?
Sure.
Okay, start the third parak. I don't have the handout yet. I'll have one tomorrow, but we can just get Mishnah Torahs.
Okay. So me and Avi were talking like last week or something.
Yeah.
Wait, do you want a Mishnah Torah also?
Do I want to what?
Mishnah Torah?
Mishnah Torah, yeah.
Yeah. So not saying the.
Oh, I don't even know. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, we were just. We were talking, and it was. We kind of had this idea that our question was like, why was it like I feel like last week I guess I asked you why why the Maaseh Merkavah was given to begin with.
Yeah.
If like it was just gonna be lost, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess you were saying that it's knowledge, so it's beneficial to have. But then I guess the question is like why have there's plenty of knowledge.
I thought you asked that, and I thought I answered that.
Yeah, maybe. I forgot. There was something last minute. I forgot what it was.
I mean, I said, I think the answer I gave to that question was I went to the Rambam's Hakdama and quoted the reason why the Torah includes Deos, like ideas, and saying that there are certain things that are discoverable by the human intellect, but it would take thousands of years to get. Right. And so because these are, it's not, I didn't mean to imply it's just because of that.
Yeah.
It's because of that, and that this is instrumental in Yedias Hashem and Yichud Hashem and Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem. Mm-hmm. The combination of both of those means that God is going to give over all the ingredients for adherence of Torah, for the highest levels of the adherence of Torah, to be able to reach those heights, in as part of the system. And also I should add one more point, which is conceptually it's not a different point, but in the Rambam's explanation of the requirements for nevuah, he also holds you need to be involved in pardes, and you need neviim in the nation. So presumably he had to give over all the stuff that needed them, enable them to get nevuah.
I see.
Yeah.
Right. So right. I guess before that point.
Yeah.
My question was if it's gonna be lost, then now we're just as good as if it wasn't given. So what's the?
So I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
Because the amount that it inevitably benefited all of those chachamim in past generations who got it and understood it, and that affected their life and their teaching, which affected us.
I see.
And the proof of that is when Moshe Rabbeinu was davening for the kapara after the Chet HaEgel, he asked for knowledge of Hashem that no one else ever got, and that helped him to actually be mispalel and to guide the nation by knowing all the midos harachamim. So, and that's really what the premise of the midos harachamim is, that knowledge of the midos HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps the individual. It changes the individual, the way that they live and the way that they relate to other members of the nation. So it definitely affected us, even though we didn't know it.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good follow-up question, though. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of knowledge that has been lost, but this isn't lost because it's wrong, we're about to start the Hilchos Yesodei Torah Perek Gimel, and this is one that a person could easily object to and say, well, why do we need to do this? It's all Aristotelian nonsense, right? So why are we doing this?
To see if we can get any insights that we can apply to our physics.
Yeah, that's one reason. I don't think that's the main reason, though, but that is my main reason, at least, for doing this is we encounter Aristotelian concepts so much in the Rambam and the Ralbag, and sometimes the Ramban, even though he says Aristotelian Makshamo. This is the Rambam's primer for those concepts. So let's say, for example, when we did Koheles earlier in the year and we saw the Gagal Hayomi, we didn't know what that was. This can provide us with stuff to understand the works of the Rishonim that talk about that. That's number one. And then number two is what you said. This is my order here. Okay? That's number one. Number two, is actually, sorry, number two is there are concepts that we're going to see here that are equally relevant. For example, in chapter 4, he's going to talk about the Tel Elohim, so even though that's in the context of his Maaseh Bereishis, it is relevant. And in order to understand some of those concepts, you need to understand some of the concepts that on the surface don't appear relevant. For example, I'm not going to quote this, I'm not going to go into this now, but like in order to understand the way the Rambam talks about bechira in Hilchos Tshuva, you need to compare it to the way he talks about the elements in Perek Gimel of Yesodei Torah. And most people just skip over that, so they're not even aware of the comparison. We can maybe do that when we get there. And then the third reason is what you said, is that that presumably if the Rambam were alive today, he would compose something similar to this chapter, but about our physics. And it'd be nice to even get a very, very hazy idea of what that might look like, So like one of the advantages now that we have that the Rambam's era didn't have is for us, if we wanted to know, for example, about astronomy, we just go on the internet and like all the experts have prepared educational things that like are understandable by people on our level. Like documentaries weren't available back then, So maybe we can actually partake of what the derech Rambam is laying out here, but with the tools at our disposal. And the raya from this is going to be at the very last halacha of this parak, which we won't get to today, obviously. But yeah, we're gonna say something. No. Okay, so let's go. And yeah.
Okay. What do you guys mean by figuring out what the Rambam would like to you're gonna have to speculate. I don't know what side the Rambam would think.
Yeah, we're gonna have to speculate. And this is related to your question about Hilchos Deos, which I think is gonna be easier in Hilchos Deos to see. But like, let's say, for example, I'm gonna use the Hilchos Deos as the example, right? Let's say in Hilchos Deos, he says something about like, how to, if you eat certain types of food with excess moisture, then you're going to become lethargic, and therefore you should eat dry foods in the dry. And he says something that like has no basis in our current understanding of diet. So one thing you see from there, though, is he's saying that food affects your midos, not just your bodily nutrition. And that insight is a very relevant insight that I think most people don't think about their midos when they're eating food, and about how there is a reality to the relationship between physiology and personality, and taking that into account when you're eating is something that we can do now, and we can even do it better than the Rambam because we can understand physiology better. So similarly here, again, this is part of what we're going to do as we go through it. I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, but I want to see if there are similar things that, from what he focuses on and doesn't focus on and how he talks about it, then like, are there like perspectives we can get? For example, in the previous parak, he said, or not just the previous parak, but also the fourth parak, he talked about how there are, 4 categories of existence. There's the forms without matter, that's the angels. Then the forms that are eternally and unchanging in their matter, that's the spheres. Then there's human beings, and then there's like plants and animals and minerals. So those 4 categories don't exist. But one of the things he's trying to do is say that man exists in a hierarchy of which he is not at the top, and that there are different kinds of existences. Some are superior to man in their knowledge of God, which is the one thing that man can pride himself on, and there's different levels of it, and that is a perspective that we can still take today, of like viewing yourself as part of a hierarchy of existences, which you're not going to get if you listen to the modern scientists, because they do view man as being at the top, so like stuff like that. That's what I'm hoping to get. Yeah, we'll see if we get it. If not, then this was it still is a good experiment. All right, there he starts off with a vav there. What was the last thing he said? Last thing he talked about in chapter 2 was was defining Maaseh Merkavah. Okay, I know it says V'halgalgalim. That's a little disturbing. V'halgalgalim heman nikraim shemayim v'rakia uzvul v'arevos. Oh, you know what I meant to do actually? I meant to print this out, but I'm just going to bring it up on the screen because this is inevitably going to use a bunch of obscure terminology. I'm using the Chabad. I'm going to bring up the Chabad.org translation. And for anyone who doesn't know this, and I've met people who don't know this, so I don't know who knows what. Chabad.org has the entire translation of all the Mishnah Torah on its website, which is a very, very good thing. So thank God that Chabad is into Rambam, because no one else would put that up there for free, I don't think. Because this is also a Chabad
They don't have the
person.
Sefer HaMitzvos.
They don't have the Sefer Mitzvahs, or they also?
They don't have the Sefer HaMitzvos. I don't think they do.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, they're into Rambam. Okay, so what was this? I looked this up because the Zvul and Arevos, the habitation in the skies. Okay, fine. You know what? Let's do this. I'm going to keep the Chabad.org up, and you tell me if there's anything significantly different. I'm just going to read from the Chabad thing here. I don't know which text they use. Okay, so V'heim. So these are the spheres. Okay, and V'heim Tisha Galgalim. These are 7 spheres. Okay, and remember, these are if Earth is in the middle. I mean, he's going to explain this, but if Earth is in the middle, then the spheres are like fish bowls, concentric, or conspiracal. Is that a word? Do you use concentric only for 2-dimensional things?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Concentric spheres is, I think, whatever. But they're like concentric. Okay. So there's 9 of them. Galga hakarav mimenu hu galga hayarech. The one closest to us is the sphere of the moon, the lunar sphere. V'hasheni shelamala mimenu hu galga shabo hakochav hanikra kochav. So the one above that, the second one is the one that has in it the planet, kochav here's planet, called kochav, which I think is Venus. Is that true? Wait a minute, look at
Planet called planet.
Yeah, I know, it's funny, right? No, it's Mercury probably, right? Because Kochav, yeah, Mercury, right? Because Kochav, how did I get that?
In the notes.
Yeah, that's what. I just hovered over there. Yeah, because I think Kochav. Something in my mind is telling me that it comes from the word messenger or traveler. I don't know if that's actually true, but Mercury is the messenger. Anyway, the Galga Shlishi, the third one, Shalamalim Mimenu Shabo Noga. The third one is above that, and that has the one called Noga. That's Venus, I think. Yep, that's Venus. The Galga Ravi Shabo Chama. The fourth one is the one that has in it the sun. Okay. The Galga Chamishi Shabo Ma'adim. The fifth one is the one that has in it Mars. Okay. The Galga Shishi Shabo Kochav Tzedek. The sixth one is the one that has Tzedek, which is Jupiter. I'm pretty sure. Yep. V'galga Shvi Shabo Shabzai. The seventh one is the one that has in it Shabzai, which is Saturn. V'galga Shmini Shabo Sha'ar Kol Kochavim Shenir and Berkia. The eighth one has all the stars in it that are seen in the sky. Sorry, yeah, I think this one's stars. V'galga Chi Hu Galga HaChozer B'chol Yom. Oh, this is the Galga HaYomi, right? This one is the Galga Chi, the ninth one. That's the Galga HaChozer B'chol Yom that revolves each day. Mimizrach Lamarav, from the east to the west, who hamakif umasabiv as a kol, and surrounds and encompasses everything.
Oh, so
I would have read misab. What was it?
No, in his it's split.
It's split.
You,
Oh, interesting. Where's the split between?
right after Mars.
Oh, interesting. Okay, wow. Yeah, this one has no split, and the English splits differently than the Hebrew. So the next one is the next. So the new paragraph is. Oh, weird. Wow. Okay, interesting. All right, fine. So stopping there just 1 second here. Here's an example of what I mean by you need to understand the other Mefarshim, because there are Mefarshim who will say, for example, that tzedek is like, or Mars, like, for example, Rabag ties the Egyptian deities to different heavenly bodies. I don't know if that's based on fact or if that's his speculation, but then uses that to explain certain things about like the korbanos. Let's say, for example, like the Korban Pesach, one of the reasons we shecht that we can shecht a goat is because the goat is associated with Aries. I think, or sorry, ram. Aries is a ram. Mars is Aries. I don't know. Well, I don't know my astrology very well, but like he gives these explanations like this, which give insight. Again, whether or not we factually they're like anthropologically true, he was attempting to like weave that into this whole scheme here. Okay. All right. So then, we said that right. Oh, yeah. V'hu hamakif u'musabev esakol. It's the one who encompasses. Now, Chabad says it surrounds and encompasses everything. I would translate that as it surrounds and causes, Misabiv, I thought, causes everything to revolve.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I would have translated it all.
Yeah. Isn't that how we saw the Rambam use it in the beginning? Masabev. Yeah, I don't know. The fact that we see all of the kochavim as if they're in one sphere, even though some are higher than the others, is because the spheres are pure and refined like glass, ukasapir and like a sapphire. That's why you can see through them. Okay, they look like they're all in one thing. All right, this is where my halakha, the second halakha starts. Okay, another break. Okay, kol galgal v'galgal b'shmona hagalgalim shebehen hakochavim nechlak lagalgalim harbe zelamal mizeh kmo gilde habitzalim. Okay, so each and every one of the spheres of these 8 spheres that contain the planets is divided into other spheres, subspheres, many of them like the layers of an onion. Okay, this was a big mystery in astronomy for a long time about how many spheres there were, and this is where the math came in, because they had to figure out the rotation of all of them based on observations and account for like how they all rotate in a way that makes sense. That's it's a big thing.
Right now they got more and more complicated.
Yes, and it was people, they were not happy about that, the fact that they had to make it so complicated. That's why Kepler was such a I think Kepler was a big help that, because he did the planetary motion, which simplified things. Some of them rotate from east to west, like the ninth gogol that goes from east to west. And there's no empty space between any of them.
Didn't he say
Mizrach Amarav. Yeah, that's what he's saying now also, though, right?
No, oh, you're right. Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
No, wait.
No?
Oh, that's the other one. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. Kol hagalgalim inan lo kalim v'lo kvedim v'in lahem lo ayin adom v'lo ayin shafar v'lo shar enos. So all of the spheres are neither light nor heavy. I guess because they're made out of the different material, and they don't have any. They don't have an appearance of red or black or other colors. The fact that we see them like tcheles, the color of tcheles, that's only to the sight of the eye.
Like in the daytime.
You must mean in the daytime, yeah. Bilvad hulfi gova ha'avir. That's because of the height of the atmosphere. So that's just an interesting thing, right? Because like, I think, I don't think this makes any difference necessarily, but like when people explain tcheles, that tcheles is the color of the sky, of the sea, which is the color of the sky, which is the color of the kisei kavod. Like Rambam is saying that no, the sky is not actually tcheles. It's the appearance of tcheles. I don't know if that matters at all, but just throwing that out there. Oh man, I thought they tasted like an onion too. They don't have any taste or smell. So that's interesting, right? So those bodily occurrences, Ma'orin, only apply to things beneath them. I mean, that's the same lashon he uses about God, right? Is that, but it's interesting. I mean, so they really did hold that these were not like corporeal things.
Yeah, but it's weird that they have location.
They have location and they are physical.
Yeah,
because they're goof and neshama, or goof and surah, chomer and surah, but they're just not made of the same thing. Okay, you know what? I got to stop today though, because it's Tuesday. I got to stop on time. All right, so let's we'll try to get through this quickly, because I think that's the best way to do it. But yeah, all right. See ya.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.